Good morning, India, and good morning, world. Yet again, another episode of Dekho Apna Desh series. But today, before we start the webinar for Dekho Apna Desh, I want to remind and I want all of you to join us in saluting someone who we call as father of the nation in India. He's been a brand ambassador for peace around the world. And there's a quote that's referred to him, which I would like to mention before we observe a minute of silence on the day when he was assassinated in 1948. A man is but a product of his thoughts. What he thinks, he becomes. That's the ode to the man who walked and helped India gain its independence way back in 1947. As a mark of respect to Mahatma Gandhi, let's just observe a minute of silence and after that start our series today. Thank you. So now I think, can start on our 74th webinar, viewers, and it has been such a pleasurable journey of meandering and walking through the beautiful and incredible India that we have been bringing to you. And thanks, viewers, for all the support and for joining us and for sending us ideas as to what is it that you would like to see, because as I always say, this is your program. Dekho Apna Desh is a platform which has been created for all of you and by you. And thanks, therefore, for also joining hands with us in bringing amazing content. And it's a matter of great pride for us that we are not only relaying it to all of you here in India who are joined in today, but to people from more than 60 odd countries who join in live. And there are people who watch it later. We will get you the figures probably next time as to how many thousands and thousands of people have actually benefited of walking through virtually. But I must also share with you, and why I have been missing for the last few Saturdays of being live with you is because I've been traveling. And so as we keep telling everyone, you still have to be careful. COVID is not exactly over yet. We are taking those small, nimble steps in being careful about ourselves. So do keep wearing your mask. Do keep the 2 gaz ki duri, social distancing. We must do all that, but we do need to start traveling because you can see places virtually, but there's nothing like a real travel. And where are we going then today? We're going to take you cruising in the mighty Brahmaputra. And bringing us today's webinar is somebody who has dedicated his life to tourism in India. So welcome, Sanjay Basu. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And viewers, if I'm going to share with you what all Sanjay has been doing, you're truly going to get amazed. But I also hope that many of us are going to get some ideas on what we can do with our time in life. Sanjay started in tourism as a mountain guide in early 1980s as a mountaineer and has climbed 7 Himalayan peaks and has extensively trekked in the Himalayas. He says he formally came into tourism in 1983 and got deeply involved in the development of tourism in Ladakh, in Spiti, Kinnaur, and then started doing camel safaris through the Thar Desert in the 1980s. In the 1990s, he played a pioneering role through Arunachal Pradesh, and we were talking about it just before the webinar. So please share the story of how you almost got arrested for traveling there. And then going all the way down to the Kerala backwaters, where he built 2 cruise boats, one of the 2 cabins and another of 9 cabins. The houseboat had the privilege of hosting the then Prime Minister, Vajpayee ji, and there was huge publicity, and I believe houseboats really became a niche product for India way back when Sanjay first did it. At the turn of the century, he launched something, again, very interesting, and we hope we can do a webinar on that, Sanjay, one of these days. The two eco lodges in Rajasthan, of which one, the Dera Dune Retreat, is still the only luxury resort built on top of a 100 feet high sand dune in the heart of the Vashonite tribal community. I'm not going to tell you too much about it today because we must do a webinar on that. It's such an exciting thing to do. But what is very interesting there is something Sanjay is going to share, how the cranes actually changed their eating habits. So I'm not going to mention that either. But today, what you are going to take us doing is a 7-night cruise. So I'm going to let you do that. And let's go into the mighty Brahmaputra in this beautiful boat that you have there. Welcome, Sanjay.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that very generous introduction. And yes, the Thar Desert and the cranes at Khichen is possibly one of the greatest love stories between humans and animals. And these birds too came about 60 odd years back, and they lost their way in migration, came to a desert, almost died because cranes need water and fish. And this villager took them in, nursed them back to health, taught them how to eat buckwheat grain. And in those years that followed, these two birds are now 30,000 plus. And they come for 6 months to Rajasthan. They become vegetarian, they eat buckwheat grain. And then the next 6 months during summers, they go back and they become non-vegetarian and they eat fish.
Wow. So that's about adaptation, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's such a lesson for all of us to learn from there.
Love can win anything. It's
absolutely fantastic. That's a fantastic new information, I'm sure, for all of us. So from the Brahmaputra, we shall definitely ask you to take us to the Thar Desert on one of the Saturdays, Sanjay. But today, I think let's go into the roaring, mighty Brahmaputra.
Sure. If I may share the screen and bring the presentation up. So my passion has really been to explore, promote, and develop the natural heritage of India, which has been rated as being the 6th greatest in the world, in a tied position with Brazil as per the World Economic Forum. And be it the mountains, deserts, rivers, forests, or the seas and the islands, that is where my passion really lay. And this cruise is a result of that. The Brahmaputra River is possibly one of the greatest rivers there can be. The journey of this river is something which mystified the world for a long, long time. This is the 5th greatest river as per average discharge. The width of the Brahmaputra River on an average is 5.46 kilometers. The maximum discharge of Brahmaputra at Pandu near Guwahati was recorded as 72,779 cubic meters per second on 23rd of August 1962. And the minimum discharge was recorded as 1,757 cubic meters on 22nd of February 1963. The average annual discharge is about 20,000 cubic meters, and average dry season discharge is 4,420 cubic meters. The reason why I'm giving these figures, though it is just technical information, is because just imagine the flow of this river when the monsoons come. When this river rises by nearly 8 meters and spreads across a maximum width of 19 kilometers, that's the scale of what this river is. It is something which is just a natural heritage, awe-inspiring example. And the reason why so much water comes into the Brahmaputra is because it covers almost about 60% or more of the northern area of the Himalayas, capturing almost 60% of the snow melt from the northern part of the Himalayas as the Yardland Sangpo, and then takes the steep turn down south and then comes into Assam, capturing another 20% of the snow melt. These are approximate figures of the snow melt of the Himalayas. And the Himalayas, as we know, is what is called as the third pole of the world, with being the third largest custodian of snows and ice. And all that melt of the river comes into this, all that melt of the snow comes into this river and then drains down through Assam into Bangladesh, causing and creating the largest delta on earth. That is the route of this river. And then comes the monsoon, and the monsoon comes up the Bay of Bengal, hits the snow-covered mountains, and then splits into two. The western branch carries on through the rest of India, and the eastern branch goes into this area of the Brahmaputra Valley. And with mountains to the north, east, and south, this eastern branch of the monsoon just gets stuck there, sits and discharges water, which just fills in the river, and then the river rises up with this huge discharge, 8 meters, and spreads out 19 kilometers. The Yardland Sangpo, or what is known as, if you translate those words, as the river, is the beginning of the Brahmaputra River. It starts from the Mansarovar Lake. And at Mansarovar Lake, this river is a 3-foot wide, a little channel which you can straddle and stand over. And at that point, this river is called as the Horse River. Kailash in the background, Mansarovar. It's a very, very holy, starting of this very, very holy river. The story of the exploration of the route of the Brahmaputra from Tibet down into Assam and then down south into Bangladesh, entering the Bay of Bengal, has been one of the greatest river exploration stories ever. In fact, it was called as the Everest of the rivers. And if one may say that possibly the greatest exploration story of a river that took nearly 200 years. And it started in 1715. And that was the time when the first initial exploration started. And then finally ended in 1913, when the final tracing of the river's route was established. In 1865 to 1873, a Pandit, the early surveyors of the survey team in India, Nain Singh, went to trace the river. He started from the Mansarovar, and from Mansarovar, he started to walk towards Lhasa. And then finally, he reached a little beyond Lhasa when he was caught. He was discovered. Because at that time, Tibet did not allow for explorations to happen in Tibet. And in fact, the penalty was death. So Nain Singh had to run away. So from a village called Chetang, he then ran towards Tawang and escaped and came back to India. But he did trace a fairly substantial part of the route of the river. However, nobody still could understand where this river was going. Some theories said that it might be the source of the Yangtze. Some said that it might be the source of the Irrawaddy. And then some did think that might be it is the source of the Brahmaputra, though many thought that Brahmaputra really originated in the Himalayas and not in Tibet. So then after that, Nain Singh along with, and he's the hero whom I'm going to talk about, Kintup, who was a tailor, a Lepcha tailor in Darjeeling. These two set off. Kintup was like a servant to Name Singh, and between 1878 and 79, they explored another 460 kilometers of the river, and then reached a little before the Gorge. So still nobody knew where this river is heading. And they were reporting to one Captain Henry Harman, and Captain Harman was coordinating all these explorations that were happening at that stage. Well, at that point, both Name Singh and Kintup returned back, and that was the end of that second stage of exploration. Then Kintup, because he had the maximum knowledge with him at that point, because Name Singh was no longer there, he was sent back by Captain Harman to do a second exploration, or I would say a third exploration into tracing the route of the Brahmaputra. And in 1880, he, along with a Lama who had a passport for Tibet, was sent in to explore. And Kintup was made to look like he was the servant of this Lama, and they were given rupees 100 and some silver to go to a place called Gyala and then explore beyond that, because that was the maximum that had been discovered till date. And he reached a village called Thumsang, and there the Lama sold him off as a slave to the local chieftain. And poor Kintup, he had to endure slavery for 6 months till he finally escaped. By then, a full year had gone by. He finally escaped and then continued on and reached Tongyuk. And Tongyuk, he was again caught. But the abbot of the monastery there was a kind man. So he took him in as a servant and told him that you can serve me, and if you earn your freedom, you are free to go. What helped Kintup all the time was that he was a tailor. So he could keep stitching quilts and jackets and things like that for all his captives. Finally, he managed to earn his freedom and moved out of there, and then reached the area beyond and came to the Great Bend. And that is when it was discovered that the Yarlung Sangpo did not continue on east, but it took the sharp bend down south. And that is where then, as per the instructions of Captain Herman, he launched a whole set of marked logs of wood, which would then be traced back in India. And even they were looking in Burma to see where these logs came out. And then the exact idea would be established of where the Brahmaputra started and where it finally proceeded and then where it ended. But by then, Captain Herman had been posted away and there was nobody looking for those logs of wood. So poor Kintup, he, having accomplished what he had accomplished, made all his notes and came back to India and submitted his notes. But for another 30 years, those notes just sat in the files of the Survey of India's office. Nobody bothered, and poor Kintup passed away, unsung hero of the exploration of the Brahmaputra. And then finally in 1913, Frederick Bailey and Henry Morshead got hold of Kintup's notes and finally explored the last part of the route of the Brahmaputra through, and then published their findings through the Royal Geographical Society, for which they were awarded the MacGregor Medal. And of course, they then claimed the success of the exploration of the route of the Brahmaputra. And it was established that the Yarlung Sangpo, the Hang Sihang River in Arunachal, and then finally the Brahmaputra. And in Bangladesh, where it becomes the Yamuna, and then finally when the Ganga meets it, it becomes the Padma. And finally, when the Meghna comes in, or the Barak River in Silchar area comes and meets and becomes the Meghna, it drains thereafter into the Bay of Bengal, forming this greatest delta on Earth, which is the Gangetic Delta, or we should really call it the Gangetic Brahmaputra Delta. So that is where the explorations of the Brahmaputra happened. This is the gorge. It is the deepest gorge in the world. One side of the slope rises up into Mount Namche Barwa, and Namche Barwa is a mountain which is 7,800 meters plus. It is the last great Himalayan mountain on the eastern side, after which the Himalayas slowly fades away. In fact, one can say that the Himalaya practically comes to an end there. And around this mountain, this river turns and takes this deep turn down south, forming this gorge, which is called the Yarlung Sangpo Gorge. The Yarlung Sangpo Gorge, after having traveled 1,700 kilometers in Tibet, falls down from 4,800 meters, that's 9,000 feet, to just 2,000 feet in a distance of just 100 kilometers, forming the greatest white waters that is there. And of course, the deepest and the longest gorge. What is also really amazing is at 9,000 feet, because of the warm air from the tropical part of, which is the India part, flows up through this gorge, and it forms this very tropical jungle in this very high altitude region, right next to the absolute desert landscape of Tibet. So, desert, and then a lush green forest, and then the roaring river coming down. This fall down of such a height in such a short distance is with nearly no waterfalls. So this is really the greatest white waters on earth. This river is also a mythological river. It's a holy river. It is nearly as holy as the Ganges. The stories that are associated with this river are just amazing. Stories of the goddess Sati, who died because of the mythological story of her getting insulted by her father, and Shiva getting very angry and coming and then taking the body of his dead wife and doing the Tandav dance, and then Vishnu cutting the body of goddess Sati, which then fell at different locations, 51 different locations, forming the Shakti Peeths. And this is a place where one of her body parts fell, and it became a pilgrimage place. So, the Brahmaputra has so much mythology attached to it, and so much holy reverence is associated with this river. And then there was the story of the Amoga wife of Sage Shantanu, who had a child by Lord Brahma. So, this river has had associations with Lord Shiva. It has had associations with Lord Brahma. And then Lord Pashuram, as an incarnation of Lord Vishnu, who had committed a terrible sin, was given a guidance that he should go and pray at a lot of holy places. And he went and prayed in this area, cutting a part of the mountain off, forming the Brahmakund. And releasing the water of the Brahmakund, which is called the Brahmaputra, and that's why it's called the son of Brahma. So Lord Vishnu too, you have the association of the trinity of Hindu gods with this river. It's a Namami Brahmaputra. It's a river that is holy, and it is prayed to, and it is um, it's an amazing mythological stories attached to it. Possibly one of the most stunning rivers to be on. You are sailing under the shadows of the eastern Himalayas. This is a river where this is the only river of the world where you are sailing under 7,000 meter high Himalayan mountains. And you can see a multitude of over 7,000 meter mountains if the weather is absolutely clear. But you can, to a very large extent, see at least these three mountains that you see on the view in the screen right now. So the mountain Gorichan, Kangto, these are all very close to Tawang, which is a great monastery. This is also the world's greatest riverine island system. So when you are cruising on the river, you are cruising through many islands. One of the most wonderful experience is to stop and tie up to these islands, set up your bar, barbecue and bonfire, and then just walk around, with your shoes and socks taken off on these pristine silver sands, and just explore around with the river flowing on all directions around you. And it's magical. The evenings are absolutely magical being on this river. It is the greatest riverine island system because it brings all the sand down from the desert of Tibet in its fast flowing waters. And when it comes to the plains, it deposits it out here. So you have the smallest riverine island and the largest riverine island of the world, located, or inhabited smallest riverine island, located in this river. One of the great attractions of this river is the Kaziranga National Park, a UNESCO World Natural Heritage Site. It is the home to the greatest reserve, or the greatest population of single-horned rhinos. I would say that if anybody in the world really wants to see rhinos, Africa is not the destination for it. India is. And you have 2,400 plus rhinos in Kaziranga National Park. People, when they visit Kaziranga, before that they ask, will we see one or two rhinos? And we say, possibly you'll see 30 to 40 rhinos in your safari. It is just so spectacular. And then with the rhinos, you have elephants, you have wild buffaloes, you have, of course, tigers, leopards, lots of species of deers, and you have the freshwater dolphin, which is possibly the largest population of freshwater dolphins now anywhere in the world. And you see them very often when you're on the river. And 484 species of birds. It is one of the greatest birding destinations of, again, India and possibly the world, because India has one of the largest populations of migratory birds for the landmass that we have. We have tea, because this is where the black tea was born. The morning cuppa, that is where it all started from, the story of the morning cup of tea. You have, of course, very holy pilgrimage temples, Kamakya being one of the greatest, which is where the story of goddess Sati was, Shakti Peeth has been established. And then you have the capital of the Ahom kings, which is at Sibsagar. This is a land of monasteries, neo-Vashonite Hindu monasteries on the Majuli island and in the region of Jorhat. It's also the home to amazing silk weaves, because Assam is home to some of the most diverse silk found in India. The Brahmaputra River is, as a cruise destination, an experience that stays with you. When you are cruising through the national park, every moment you are seeing wildlife along the river. And when you're on the sun deck of the river, of the cruise ship in the river, you are seeing wildlife in the river, you're seeing wildlife on the banks of the river, you're seeing birds flying up on this above in the sky. It's like a bubble of natural history around you, and spectacular sunsets. To just describe one experience, this was about 3 years back, tying up to the banks of the river. We had a spectacular sunset at the back of the ship. We had a beautiful full moon rising up in front. We had the snow-covered mountains to our port side, and we, on our starboard side, had elephants, deers, rhinos, wild buffaloes, and of course there were freshwater dolphins in the river, and there were birds flying above. Something that can never leave you as a memory. So the route of the cruise starts from Guwahati and goes till Jorhat. On the way, we are visiting various destinations, which I will cover. You are very easy to fly into both the sides of the cruise, the beginning and the ending part. You can start with Guwahati, and you can reach Guwahati from Calcutta, Delhi, Mumbai, Bagdogra, Paro, and Bangkok. You will end at Jorhat, and then from Jorhat you can go on to Calcutta and Delhi. So very well connected by flights. You start with the Kamakya Temple, which is, like I said, a holy pilgrimage place, a Shakti Peeth of great significance, one of the greatest significance for Hindus. You stop over at the smallest inhabited island, Riverline Island, which is Peacock Island. And there is, again, it's a pilgrimage place. There are temples devoted to Hindu gods, and you take the tender, you come to the island, you walk up the hill, and you explore the place, you visit the temples, you pray there. And then you go on a nature walk, because this is a place that has a lot of bird life. And then from the Peacock Island, you continue navigating, and you come to these villages along the banks of the river. These are Bangla-speaking villages where you see a lot of wonderful agriculture. So it's quite an experience to just see the farming that they do, vegetables and fruits, and of course, the normal crops. You reach Silghat and you experience the culture of Assam. This is where the culture is seen with the dance forms, the Bihu dances. You see the dance forms of the people who do the cultivation in the tea gardens, which is called Jhumar. And then continue on to explore the festivals, because Assam is a land of amazing festivals. There are 3 types of Bihu. Then there is the Ras Utsav and Majuli, and there are multitude of other smaller festivals. So most of the times when you're cruising, you will get to encounter some very celebratory atmospheres in the villages around you. What you see these ladies, their dress, that is called the Moga Silk. It's a very fine silk. And as you can see, the weave is very, very colorful. So it's an amazing fabric to view and possess. We come to the story of tea explorations. The black tea started from here. Tea, as we all know, is just the leaves. but it's actually 2 leaves and the bud, which is growing at the very tip of the stem. Only that is plucked, not the rest, because if you pick the rest, it becomes a very sour drink. And the 2 leaves and bud is what forms the black tea that we drink every day. If you take the bud only, it is called the the diamond tea, or the white tea, and that is the finest, the most expensive. And if you take all three together, it becomes the black tea. So the story of the tea explorations started in 1774, when Warren Hastings sent a selection of Chinese seeds to India and to Bhutan for planting, but they were not successful. In 1776, Sir Joseph Banks, another great English botanist, was asked to try to do cultivation. Then, of course, Robert Kyde experimented with tea cultivation in India with sending the consignment from seeds from China. Did not work. Finally, it was Robert Bruce who discovered that tea plants growing in the wilderness in the Brahmaputra Valley could be used to cultivate a very fine drink, which would become the black tea. And he discovered this by actually meeting the local tribals who were already brewing the leaves from this tree and into a brew, which he tried and realized the potential of that, which can be considered as the predecessor to the modern day black tea. It's a story which is another amazing story associated to the river. The whole exploration of tea, so many options were tried. Chinese plants were planted, nothing happened, and eventually an endemic tree was used. So when you see the bushes, the tea bushes, you see them as being just waist high. But if you leave them in the wilderness, they will grow up to being a full tree. They are pruned so that they create a crop of fresh leaves and the bud constantly. And that is why you see these kept as bushes. In May 1823, the first Indian tea from Assam was sent to England for public sale. And then it became famous as the black tea. One of the destinations we visit is a jute mill. Of course, it's a very old factory, old technology, but jute is coming back. And I think it is something that's so important because jute could possibly tomorrow replace plastic, making this a much more sustainable world for all of us. And India could lead in that process. After the explorations of the tea plantation and the jute mill at Silghat, from where actually I would like to mention, for those who want to do a shorter program, you can break away after a 2 or 3 nights cruise and not do the complete 7 nights. This would be very relevant for the domestic travelers who might not want to stay for a longer period. Or you can join in and do a 4 or 5 night cruise to continue further. So this is a cruise, which is the only other cruise apart from the Zambezi in Africa, on which you're doing boat, elephant, and jeep safaris. And you really get close to the wildlife. On the elephant safari, of course, you get very, very close. And I do want to mention that the elephants in Kaziranga National Park are really well looked after. They are mainly domestically born, and they're very gently treated. And then you have the jeep safari, and on the boat safari, you are exploring a completely different part of the national park. A lot of animals come to the river for drinking water, and this becomes very exciting you are also having dolphins around you while you're doing this boat safari. And we've had amazing experiences of spotting elephants, wild buffaloes, um, you tigers, occasionally rhinos too. That's the wildlife of Kaziranga, the big five: wild buffaloes, elephants, rhinos, the barasingas, the tiger. And this tiger is very unique. It's very different. It's called the golden tiger. It has a suppressed gene because of which the color is lighter than a normal tiger. But this golden tiger is a very rare tiger to sight. We've seen it quite a few times along the bank of the river because it seems to have made its home there. I think it feels, being an older tiger, if a younger tiger comes, he can escape across to some of the islands nearby. But this tiger was seen in 2016, and after that, we've seen it now in 2019-20 on the banks of the Brahmaputra River. And then, of course, you have a whole host of other wildlife. You have beavers, and you have the rufous turtle, you have the rhesus, you have the monitor lizard, you have the water monitor lizard, the barking deer, lots of wildlife. The birds of the Brahmaputra River, 474 species of birds in the river valley. It is one of the richest birding destinations in the world. India is one of the most beautiful birding destinations in the world. We have 1,272 species of birds in this country, which is 60% of the bird life of the continent of Africa, with only 10% of the landmass. And the reason for that is because across the Himalayas are the cold lands, and south of the Himalayas are the warm lands of India and the wetlands of India. And that is why we attract so much of the migratory birds coming down and settling in the water bodies and the rivers of this country, which is a real attraction. And then you have the carnivorous birds, again, amazing diversity of eagles, hawks, and various different carnivorous birds. You have vultures and the water body birds, pelicans and grebes and storks. We have a lot to offer out there. The cormorants and the herons and the egrets, of course. And then the hornbill, the great hornbill. This is a home to the great hornbill, which is one of the greatest birds in this country. And the story of the hornbill is something that's really amazing. They are as a pair for life. And when the female gives eggs, she gets into a hole in a tree, and she stitches with straws and closes the hole and stays inside with her eggs. And the male is constantly foraging food, and through a small hole left, he keeps feeding the female and the female to the chicks. So it's an amazing bird, huge, beautiful, gentle. And of course, many, many more birds in the valley. The kingfishers, the owls. Another great attraction is the weaving. I believe that the Northeast is one of the greatest destinations for weaves that one can see. You have so many different tribal communities in this region, and each tribe has a different dress style, dress color, dress code. And when you put them all together, the diversity of the textiles of the Northeast is something that is that's really stunning. especially the diversity of the colors. This is in Bishwanath Ghat, a village where every home has a loom and every family is a weaver family. And you have the weaving of silk happening. You have three types of silk: Moga silk, the patch silk, the eri silk. And Muga is the main silk of this area, with Pat silk and eri silk being the others. Muga is this very rich, um, brown colored silk fabric, and the Pat silk tends to be more, silver in color. And then you have the eri silk, which is actually very interesting because it's a non-violent silk. It's non-violent because you don't kill the worm when you extract the silk. So it's something really amazing. Land of the silk in the east. And then we visit some tribal villages, the Mishing tribals. And the Mishing tribals are a tribe which is living on the islands and on the banks of the river Brahmaputra. Very, very interesting people living in huts which are on stilts, because the river swells up and the river comes into their village during the monsoons, and they climb up onto the huts which are elevated to be safe from the water. These are again people with a lot of weaving skills. They do a lot of cotton and silk mixed weaving. And you can see the huts that they live in, a central hearth where that is the fire, that's the stove, that's the cooking place, the family's gathering place. And slowly they are catching on because education has reached there, roads have reached to their villages, and there's been so much progress that has been seen now. We are almost seeing the places transform with tradition and with modernity. Then we sail on and we come to the island of Majuli. Majuli is the largest riverine island in the world. It used to be 1,277 square kilometers, which is now, with erosion, reduced to 484 square kilometers. This is an island which is, of course, a natural heritage, unique site, but it's also home to the Neo-Vashonite Monasteries, which were started by the Swami Shankardeva, who's very revered in the area of Assam. And the Neo-Vashonite monasteries have amazing cultures. They have beautiful dance forms. They have beautiful temples. And each monastery has a different dance form, which is amazing to explore and discover. And we go from one monastery to another and experience their culture, their life. These monasteries have essentially male monks, and they pray to Lord Krishna and to Lord Vishnu, and they devote their entire life to Lord Vishnu. Further on, we come to Jorhat, and from Jorhat, we take an excursion to Sibsagar, the capital of the Ahom kings. The Ahoms originally came from south of the region of Yunnan into North Thailand. And then from North Thailand, they came into the valley of Brahmaputra. And through their diplomatic and their administrative skills, they brought together all the different tribes that were living there and created this kingdom of the Ahoms. The Ahoms were never conquered. In fact, the Mughals had attempted, but they could not cross the Brahmaputra River because of the amazing naval skills as well as military skills of these rulers and these people. And the culture just flourished in this region. And you see in Sibsagar some lovely palaces, This is an amphitheater where the kings used to sit on the upper floor and watch games happening in front. This is called Rang Mahal. And you have the palaces also in the region surrounding this area, also some forts. You also have the temple of Shiva Dole, which is another pilgrimage place. It is a temple devoted to Lord Shiva, and there are a lot of ceremonies and a lot of festivals and a lot of experiences that we give to the travelers here. They really come and enjoy participating in doing a prayer at the temple. We come on in the navigation and see so much life on the river. You have this bamboo being floated down the river to sell. That's how they bring it down, tied up together, made into a raft. They make their little hutments on top of the raft and flow down the river, taking a few days, and then reach to the markets where this bamboo is then sold. You have ferry boats where people, two-wheelers, cars, everything is going on those boats. And it looks precarious, but they're very, very safe and very efficient. You see a lot of fishermen, you see life on the banks of the river. It's an amazing scenery. The sunsets on the Brahmaputra is something that you can never forget. You continue on to through the cruise, you see some spectacular sceneries. As you can see, that's the evening on the deserted islands with the silver sands around you, and the freshwater dolphins, the Himalayan views, the tigers, and so on and so forth. And we come to the cruise, where we will show a small video to give you an experience of the cruise itself. The MV Mahabaahu is a 23 cabin ship with a swimming pool and a spa and a passenger elevator that connects 4 out of the 5 decks. It is a 5-star ship. The destination and the experience was called as one of the top 50 adventure holidays on earth, and by the Sunday Times of UK. And the cruise itself was called as one of the top 10 river cruise ships of the world by Travel Insider magazine of Qantas Australian Airlines. So we'll just play the video.
just had the most fantastic week on board.
So that was the presentation on the Brahmaputra River. Amazing destination with amazing history, mythology, nature, culture. It really has everything to it. And not to forget tea. So next time you drink tea, remember the Brahmaputra River. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's fascinating, fascinating. Thank you so much, Sanjay. And I am continuously reading the comments on the side, and it is so heartwarming. Viewers, this is incredible India. It's truly, truly incredible. We don't just say it's incredible India, but it's a truly incredible country. And the product that you've seen today in this webinar is something I think people are saying it's so inviting, it is spectacular, it is fabulous. It just makes our heart go so warm. But if you can add some tea to that, you'll feel even more warm. So some questions coming in, and it's about which is the best season to actually do this cruise, and how do you tailor it, etc., etc. So what is the best season, Sanjay, to do the cruise?
You start from October and you can go on till April. In fact, now, because Kaziranga National Park is kept open even till middle of May, you can go on till middle of May too. Though, of course, the later part of April and May does get rains, but the period from October through till April is fantastic.
And how early on should a person actually book, and how do you actually book it? Do you have an online system? Because there are people who've logged in from various parts of the world today, and they are clearly looking forward to visiting our incredible India. So how early would you suggest they actually start doing their bookings?
We do start getting bookings about a year in advance, or a little more too. My suggestion is that those who do have a firm idea of when they want to travel should book at the earliest, but definitely at least a couple of months before. And the website has a booking system to it. So you can go on to the website www.adventurerivercruises.com, and you can book the cruise on that.
Okay, so there are questions around the costing. I'm sure the website must be giving all those details. And also, there is an interesting question from Sonia. She says, how are you developing post-pandemic vocal for local products? So I have a question for you there. That is this cruise actually made in India, or did you buy it from some another country? And how long has it been here for?
We built this cruise from scratch in India. It was the first cruise ship ever built in India.
Local for local, yeah.
Absolutely. Total Make in India project. We started off with designing it on a piece of A4 size paper, which of course then went to naval architects for being perfected. And the design was changed 29 times before we finally managed to build the ship to the specifications that we wanted. We wanted it to be an international class cruise ship, and it has turned out to be that. You know, it's been rated as one of the top 10 in the world. So, but it was a challenge, the building of the ship, and but it was a challenge that brought lovely end result.
Fantastic, fantastic. So we actually have a viewer, Miss Williamson from UK, and she had put in an alarm to join us live. Comments like these, viewers like you, Jeannie, I mean, that's what keeps us going. And I'm going to ask each of you that you join in, ask your friends and family. We do this show every Saturday, 11 a.m. And if you can set alarms and join us from overseas, it just motivates it even more. But if you didn't want to do that, we do put out the recordings on the official website of the Ministry of Tourism. So you can go under Dekho Apna Desh. Dekho Apna Desh literally translates into see your country. And you can see the recordings later if you are, because you could be in a very, very difficult time zone, and also with unlockdowns happening, people have work to go back to. So we don't necessarily expect you to find time for an hour to be with us every Saturday, but we run it every Saturday, 11 a.m. And therefore, keep encouraging us, keep joining us. Also, keep sending us ideas as to what would you want us to showcase. And as I said in the beginning, this is your program. So if you want to join us, we would be more than happy to host any of you who can put together 1 hour of an interesting program. And my only request and suggestion when asked that what is it that should we show, I said, whatever you show, at the end of that 1 hour, we should all feel, hey, you know what, today I want to go into the Brahmaputra cruise. So that's the sentiment that needs to essentially come out. And so some more questions coming in, but before I take some of them, because we do have a couple of minutes, is that next week, and next Saturday, that is, we are going to take you on another very different terrain in India, and we're going to take you back to Ladakh. We did a webinar on Ladakh very early on when we started on 14th of April. I think it was the second one which we had run. And now again, we're going to take you to Ladakh, but we're going to take you to a very different aspect of Ladakh. You're going to go and see the stars from Ladakh. So it's a journey of astronomy through a telescope. I'm not going to tell you more about that because then I'll be letting the cat out of the bag. But it's an interesting webinar. I can assure you that you would love it. So do join in next week also with us at 11 a.m. and we shall keep showing you our beautiful, incredible country. Well, now for another question, Sanjay, an important one is that in terms of sustainability, how do you see the region dealing with that? Because I think that's always a challenge for tourism, that while we are increasing the number of people who travel and tour, but how to make sure that we are not losing the nature and their whole ecosystem, which is what we are going for in the first place.
That's a very good question and a very, very important concern. The Kaziranga National Park is possibly one of the most beautiful, in fact, the most beautiful, I would say, national park in the country. I might be a little biased, but there it goes. It is a region which must be looked after. And therefore, I think the cruise is a good way to go on it, because the number of ships is going to be controlled. It's going to be controlled in the sense that there has to be a ship to really do that experience. So it's a very controlled environment. And normally such products are operated by very responsible operators. And we all tend to ensure that we don't leave anything but footprints behind and take nothing but photographs from the region. So, all the garbage is carried out. The entire operation is very, very sustainable. In fact, the ship has been rated as being outstanding on a sustainability parameter by audits that have been done, which are affiliated even to the United Nations Sustainable Tourism Criteria. So we are all very conscious that the magic of this destination can stay alive only when we ensure with responsibility to keep it sustainable.
Fantastic. And I think, Sanjay, you'll agree, and I'm sure viewers, you shall all agree that being responsible towards environment is something that we all need to join hands with. And it is not just about the providers of services, but all of us as users of those services also need to remember those small little things on how to be responsible around with our environments, and not to overuse the resources that have been brought to us by Mother Earth, because the carbon footprint of humanity is increasing way a bit too fast. And I think in that sense, perhaps COVID has been a kind of a reminder for all of us to say that, you know what, you really cannot overuse or poorly use everything that has been gifted to us by Mother Earth. Well, there are some more comments coming in. People want us to do more on cuisine. Yes, we shall. Food is something we all love in India, don't we? And the sheer variety. I think if we started doing cuisine, we could possibly do it.
Yes, I completely agree. The cuisine of India is possibly one of the most diverse and the richest that there can be. The spices and from the rice base to the wheat base to 84 different styles of preparation of the humble potato in Indian cuisines. I think that is something that just is unlimited. Have we lost Mrs. Brar? Might be I can take some of the questions. We do have some cruises planned even in the spring season right now, just a couple of them. So you're more than welcome to book those departures too. It's a pleasure to meet you, Janine and Claudia. You all have been such supporters of this cruise experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Basu. In fact, it was a wonderful, wonderful webinar. And the kind of response, as ADG ma'am has said, we are getting, you have brought a very different segment of the country, and Northeast is still quite unexplored in the mind of people. So with these words, I think we'll say thank to you. And we look forward to having another session with you where we like to take you us through the deserts of Rajasthan. And also we want to do another webinar with you where we like to travel to Kerala. So with this, viewers, we'll end today's webinar. And once again, a very big thank you to Mr. Basu for this wonderful session today. Thank you all, and we'll see you next Saturday, where we'll be going to Ladakh on a very different kind of experience. Thank you.
Thank you, viewers, and thank you very much, Ms. Brar. Thank you, Bharti.